They say the wind never stops in Palo Duro Canyon, not even to catch its breath. It whistled over the ridges that evening, curling around the brittle fences and sighing through the mesquite, like it was whispering secrets too old for anyone to remember. Clara Jessup leaned against the porch rail of her two-room homestead, eyes scanning the horizon. The sun was sinking behind a curtain of red dust, casting long, stretched shadows across the empty pasture where nothing but scrub goats grazed. Her daughter, Lucy, sat on the porch step humming to a tune no one had taught her, threading beads onto a string of horsehair. The quiet had a weight to it. Clara had learned to listen for what wasn't there, the missing birdsong, the absent clatter of distant hooves. Tonight, the silence pressed harder than usual. She'd felt it in her bones since morning. When the noise finally came, it was soft. A thud, then another. Not the sharp rhythm of a healthy gallop, but a broken lurch, like a dying rhythm struggling to keep time. She reached instinctively for the Winchester propped against the doorframe. Lucy looked up, eyes wide but calm. They had a quiet understanding about such things. Out past the first row of fence posts, just where the land dropped into the gully, a horse stumbled into view, its flanks heaving with effort. On its back slumped a man, held in the saddle only by sheer will or unconscious muscle. The horse buckled at the knee and collapsed. The man rolled into the dust, not moving. Clara didn't call out. She didn't rush down. She waited. 5 breaths. 10. A coyote howled. The man still didn't move. She finally stepped off the porch, rifle in hand, boots crunching over the grit. The wind picked up again, pulling at the hem of her skirt. When she reached him, she knelt slowly, weapon angled across her knee. Blood stained his shirt, the color near black, in the fading light. He was young, maybe 30, with days of trail dust on his clothes and a dried split on his lip. His eyes fluttered open just as she brushed back the brim of his hat. "Water," he rasped. "You shot?" she asked. He nodded weakly, then slumped again. A line of fresh blood crept from his side, painting the dirt. Clara looked around. Nothing but horizon, no signs of pursuit. Still, this kind of trouble didn't ride alone. With a grunt, she lifted him under the arms, dragging him slowly toward the house, while Lucy ran ahead to clear the table. He was lighter than he looked, but the limp weight of the unconscious was always heavier than the living. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of wood smoke and lye soap. Clara laid him out on the kitchen table, lit the lantern, and fetched the tin box from the cabinet above the stove. Bandages, whiskey, a rusted pair of forceps, thread, needle. Lucy stood in the corner, silent and wide-eyed. "Stay there," Clara said. She peeled away the man's coat, then his blood-soaked shirt. The bullet had torn a path, just above his ribs. It wasn't deep, more a gouge than a kill shot, but it had bled plenty. She cleaned it, poured whiskey over it, then dug in with the forceps. The man flinched, groaning once. "Hold still if you want to live," she murmured. He didn't wake fully, just muttered something that caught her ear. "Ledger, Marshall, they'll kill 'em all." Her hands paused. She looked at his face, trying to match it to a name or a wanted poster, but there was nothing familiar in his features. Just a tired man, haunted by something bigger than himself. She sewed the wound closed with the precision of someone who'd done it before, more than once. When she finished, she wrapped his chest, tucked a blanket around him, and eased him onto the narrow cot near the stove. "Who is he?" Lucy whispered, coming closer. "Doesn't matter," Clara said. "He's hurt." "Is he bad?" "Not tonight. Tonight he's breathing." They ate in silence, cornbread and beans. Clara kept an eye on the window and one ear on the man's shallow breathing. The night outside stretched long and brittle, filled with the kind of quiet that only comes before a storm. At some point, the fire popped loud, and the man stirred again. His eyes opened wider this time, more aware. You didn't run," he said, voice a rasp. "I don't run," Clara replied, feeding another log into the stove. "Should've. They're coming." "Who?" "Riders. 50 maybe. By dawn." Clara stood still for a moment, back to him, hand resting on the iron poker. She didn't ask if he was certain. She didn't ask what he'd done. The way he said it, there was no doubt in the words. Only time left. "50's a lot of men," she said. "I have something they want. Ledger with names, payments, orders. Whole damn truth. Why bring it here?" "I didn't mean to." Horse gave out. "Saw your lantern. Just needed one more night." Clara nodded slowly, more to herself than to him. She crossed the room, bent over, and pulled a folded quilt from the bottom drawer. Tucked beneath it was a revolver, clean, oiled, and loaded. She set it beside the rifle near the door. Lucy had fallen asleep at the table, cheek on her arm. Clara gently scooped her up and laid her in the back room, then returned to the main room and sat beside the fire. The man on the cot coughed, winced, then said, "You got time to ride out, before they get here." Clara looked at the flames, eyes distant but steady. "This is my land, my girl's bed. My husband's bones are under that oak out back. Ain't leaving." He watched her, blinking slowly. "You a fool or a saint?" "Neither," she said. "Just someone who's tired of men like that thinking the world's theirs to burn." She didn't speak again, just listened to the wind, to the creak of the rafters, and to the faint rhythm of hooves far off in the canyon, drawing closer with every minute. The wind rattled the window panes, making them hum like low-tuned strings. Clara sat near the fire, nursing a mug of coffee gone cold, her eyes never leaving the man stretched on the cot. He dozed off again, shallow breaths, his brow beaded with sweat. His coat lay draped over a chair, stiff with trail dust, one inside pocket weighed by a square outline. She reached for it. The leather-bound ledger slid out like it had been hiding too long. She opened the first page. Names, columns of them, lined beside dates, towns, and cryptic notes. Burned East Field. Paid in full. Boy left hanging. She turned another page. The handwriting changed once, then again. There were dozens of entries, all neat and damning. Clara's hands trembled, not from fear but recognition. She knew the names of some of these ranches' families wiped out, land swallowed by silence. And there, 2/3 down a page from 4 years back. Jessup, one holdout. Fire set, husband down. Widow unconfirmed. Her mouth went dry. She stared at it long enough for the ink to blur. They'd written her family's ruin like it was a line in a ledger, a transaction. Confirmed or not. The man stirred again. "You shouldn't read that," he said softly. She snapped the ledger shut. Too late. He tried to sit up and failed. "I kept it hidden for months. Was headed for Amarillo, to a marshal I trust. But they were always one step behind." "What's your name?" she asked. "Silas Creed. Used to wear a badge from McAllister County, until I got too curious." "Curious gets men killed," she said. Silas nodded. "It was Red Jack's riders that did it. Took bribes from cattle barons, cleaned up problems, like your husband. I didn't know at first. Then I saw the orders. Started copying them down. Ledger's the only proof left." "You said 50 riders?" "Could be more. They move at night. Fast. Hard to count. They won't just want me. They'll burn the place down to make sure the truth dies with me." Clara stood and walked to the door. She opened it just enough to feel the night air on her face. Cold. Still. The kind of stillness that only meant one thing in the canyon. Men waiting in the dark. She stepped outside and walked the perimeter of the ranch. The goats were restless, huddled near the barn. The dog, old and half-blind, paced with unease. She checked the root cellar door, still firm, still hidden beneath stacked brush. If it came to it, she could hide Lucy and the ledger there. Inside, she lit another lantern and carried it to the barn. In the far corner beneath the floorboards was a trunk wrapped in oiled canvas. She pried it open and ran her hand across the metal. A Sharp's buffalo rifle, 2 Colt Navy revolvers, and an old Ranger badge wrapped in linen. She hadn't touched them in nearly 5 years. She cleaned the weapons with practice speed. Memory returned with each click and scrape, riding flank for a Ranger posse, taking down rustlers in the panhandle, walking into saloons where men stopped talking the moment she passed. They'd called her CA back then. Some thought it stood for a man's name. She never corrected them. By the time she returned to the house, Lucy was awake, rubbing her eyes and hugging her doll close. "Why are you dressed like that?" the girl asked. Clara looked down at herself. Canvas duster, trousers, boots she hadn't worn since her badge days. "Just in case we have company," she said. Lucy nodded like she understood. She always understood more than her years let on. The rest of the night passed in a slow crawl, the clock ticking louder with each hour. Silas drifted in and out of consciousness. At one point, he asked about Clara's husband, how long it had been, if she missed him. "Every day," she answered. "You ever think of leaving this place?" "I did once," she said, pausing. "Then I remembered why I stayed." He didn't ask more. He didn't need to. Around the third hour past midnight, Clara stood by the window, watching the rise of the canyon trail. The moon sat heavy in the sky, its light bleeding silver over the land. Then she saw it, just a flicker at first. A glint of metal, then 2, then 50. No sound, no gallop, just dark shapes crawling along the ridge like ants, silhouetted by moonlight. Her breath caught. She turned back to Silas, who was struggling to sit up again. "They found us," she said. His face paled. "They'll surround the house. Corner you." "I've been cornered before." Clara handed him one of the revolvers. His grip was weak, but his aim, she sensed, was still sure enough. She checked the rifle, tightened the strap across her chest, then walked over to Lucy. "You remember what we practiced?" Lucy nodded. "You go to the cellar. You stay quiet. You don't come out unless I come for you. Understand?" The girl clung to her for a moment, then slipped away through the back, silent as a wisp. Clara turned down the lamp, left just a low flame. The firelight danced along the floor, throwing shadows like dancers with knives. She sat in the rocking chair by the window, rifle across her knees, gaze fixed on the trail. They were closer now. She could see their outlines, coats flapping, rifles slung over shoulders, a few with torches held low. Then she heard it. A single voice carried on the wind. "Bring out the rider. And the book. We'll let you walk if you do." Clara didn't answer. The wind answered for her, whistling through the gaps in the boards, cold and rising. Silas coughed behind her. "They won't stop." "I know. You're not what I thought you were," he said. She didn't turn to look at him. Her eyes were fixed on the shapes moving like ghosts along her land. "I used to wear a star," she said softly. Outside, another voice called. This time, Clara rose. Her finger rested against the rifle's trigger. The last of the firelight flickered behind her. And then, all at once, the shadows stepped into range. The first shot didn't come from Clara. It came from the ridge, a warning round, striking the porch rail and spitting splinters across her boots. She didn't flinch. Instead, she stood and stepped into the open doorway, letting the torchlight cast her silhouette in full view. Another voice rang out from the dark. "Last call, widow. We want the lawman. We want the book. Don't make us take it from your ashes." She stepped onto the porch, calm as sunrise. "My name's Clara Jessup," she said, her voice steady, carried by the canyon's hush. "My husband died here. My neighbors vanished. And I know the names of every rancher and widow scrawled in that ledger. I'm not handing anything over." The night seemed to hold its breath. A gun cracked from the dark. The post beside her exploded. Clara dropped to one knee and fired once, her Sharp's rifle bucking like a mule. The sound tore through the canyon, followed by a scream and the thud of a falling body. Then the siege began. Shots poured in from 3 sides, hammering the house with lead. Windows shattered, with splintered. Clara ducked and rolled back inside, dragging the rifle with her. Bullets sliced through the walls like knives through parchment. She crawled to the far side and fired blind toward the barn, buying seconds. "Back window." Silas groaned from the cot. She nodded. Smoke already drifted through the roof rafters. They'd tossed torches. Somewhere behind the house, she heard fire crackling, hungry and rising. "They'll try to smoke us out," he rasped. Clara helped him up, slinging one of his arms over her shoulder. He was heavier than she expected, or maybe her breath was just shorter now. Together, they staggered to the back door. The cellar hatch stood partly open, brush kicked aside. Clara lowered Silas into the earth without a word. She handed him the second revolver, their last defense if it came to it. "You and Lucy stay down." No matter what you hear, she whispered. Then she shut the door. Outside, the barn was already ablaze. Flames danced across the thatched roof, painting the yard in orange and gold. Riders closed in at a trot, weapons drawn, bandanas across their faces like wolves circling a cornered deer. Clara ran low, staying behind the goat pen, breath fogging in the night air. Her rifle barked again, once, twice, and 2 riders fell from their saddles, crumbling into dust. They tried surrounding her. She saw the leader now, Red Jack himself, red duster flapping, white hat glinting under the moon. His pistol smoked as he fired wildly toward the shadows. "Come out, Clara. Ain't no legend big enough to save you now." "You'd be surprised," she muttered. She rolled behind the trough, swapped cartridges, and steadied her breath. She had 3 rounds left. 1 for Jack, 2 for the next bastards who tried the door. Then came the sound that stopped her heart. Lucy's voice, crying. It was faint, but clear, above the fire, above the gunshots, coming from the wrong side of the house. Clara's hands trembled. She sprinted low through the brush, circling the house's north side. She spotted 2 riders dismounting, approaching the cellar door. One held Lucy by the arm, the other kicked at the hatch. Clara didn't hesitate. She fired once. The man holding Lucy dropped. The second turned, startled, too late. Her second shot dropped him cold. Lucy ran to her as the cellar opened, and Silas emerged, pistol ready but unsteady. "You all right?" Clara asked, sweeping her daughter into her arms. Lucy nodded, though tears streaked her cheeks. "Back in," Clara said. "Now." But a voice bellowed behind them. "Stop, Red Jack." He stood 10 yards off, gun aimed straight at Clara, face twisted in something that was almost amusement. "You put up quite the fight," he said. "Always wondered who burned my men in Laredo. Now I know." Clara straightened. "I didn't burn them. I buried them." He smiled. "Step closer. Then let's see if you're fast enough to join them." Clara knew the rifle wouldn't raise in time. Jack fired, but the bullet never struck. Instead, Jack staggered back, a red blossom blooming from his chest. Behind Clara, Silas had fired the shot. The old lawman stood barely upright, smoke curling from his revolver. Red Jack crumpled to the dirt, his legend undone in silence. The remaining riders saw their leader fall and hesitated. Without orders, they had no purpose, only fear. One by one, they turned and fled into the night, hooves pounding like thunder across the canyon floor. Silas collapsed. Clara caught him just before he hit the ground, easing him down. "Tell me that was the last one," he murmured. She looked across the yard. Firelight cast long shadows, but no more shapes moved. Just silence and the distant thrum of retreat. "It's over," she said. He closed his eyes. "That ledger better be worth it." Clara glanced toward the cellar, where it still lay hidden in linen. "It will be." As dawn broke over the canyon rim, light spilled over the charred yard and the smoking barn. The wind carried away the last whispers of gunpowder and ash. Clara stood with Lucy beside her, rifle slung, dust on her boots, blood on her sleeves. The widow no longer. Now, they'd call her something else entirely. The sun rose slow and amber, bleeding light across the canyon like a blessing too long withheld. Smoke curled from the ruined barn, a black ribbon against the orange sky. Chickens scratched nervously in the dust. A goat limped across the yard, favoring a leg. The quiet was too heavy to be peace, but it was a start. Clara stood at the edge of the porch, boots firm in the soot-streaked earth. Her coat was torn at the elbow, one sleeve soaked in someone else's blood. The rifle leaned against the doorframe. She hadn't put it down yet. Lucy sat on the steps, face pale and blank. She clutched her doll tight, like it still had magic in its cotton seams. Clara watched her a long time, then reached down and brushed soot from the child's cheek. "You did brave," she said softly. Lucy didn't speak, just leaned against her mother's leg, silent as the land itself. Behind them, Silas groaned from the cot where Clara had laid him. She stepped inside, poured the last of the water into a tin cup, and held it to his lips. "How bad?" he asked. She peeled back the bandage she tied with an old shirt. The bullet had passed clean through his shoulder. Painful but not fatal. You'll ride again, she said. He chuckled once, winced, and coughed. Good. I still owe a few folks explanations. Outside, hooves approached, not a charge, but a single rider coming slow down the canyon trail. Clara picked up her rifle again and stepped onto the porch, hard hammering. A young man in a Federal issue duster rode up, hands visible, face drawn and wary. His horse kicked dust as it stopped 10 feet from her. Name's Deputy Lang, he called. From Amarillo. We've been tracking Red Jack for over a year. Found some of his men this morning, tied to trees, shot in the back. Heard word he was headed here. Town folks said a widow lived at this ranch. Clara didn't lower the rifle. That's right. Lang nodded slowly. You seen him. She gestured with her chin toward the hill where they'd buried Jack in a shallow grave at dawn. The dirt was still fresh, marked only with a rock and silence. You alone? He asked. For now, she said. Lang climbed down, his boots thudding against the earth. He eyed the scorched barn, the shattered window frames, the shell casings scattered like birdseed. His gaze landed finally on the blood trail near the porch. This wasn't no ordinary shootout. No, Clara said. It was justice. Lang didn't argue. Instead, he pulled a leather satchel from his saddlebag and removed a folded paper. He handed it to her, without ceremony. The wax seal bore the crest of the U.S. Marshals. Orders for arrest. Red Jack and all his known riders. That ledger. Silas sent pages of it months back, before he disappeared. We've got indictments coming. Big men. Cattle lords. Judges. It's gonna shake the bones of this territory. Clara took the paper, but her eyes stayed on the horizon. Lang followed her gaze. You ever think of riding with the law again? There's talk in Austin. They remember the name Jessup. I buried that star a long time ago, she said. Maybe it's time to dig it up. She didn't answer. Lang tipped his hat. If you change your mind, come find us. We'll be waiting. By mid-morning, he was gone. Just another rider lost in the heat shimmer, trailing dust into memory. That night, Clara sat on the porch while Lucy slept inside, curled under blankets, still smelling of gunpowder and cedar. Silas lay quiet, his breathing steady. The world felt possible again. She opened the ledger by lantern light, page after page of pain and reckoning, but also hope. Each name she read was a spark, each town a reason to press forward. Not just for vengeance, but for truth. There would be trials. Some of the men in the book had never seen the inside of a cell, but they would now. Because one wounded rider carried the evidence, and because one widow chose not to run. Word spread faster than prairie fire. They started calling her the Canyon Widow. Said she stood alone against 50 riders. Said she never flinched when Red Jack raised his pistol. Said she carved justice out of the night with a buffalo rifle and 2 cold eyes. In the towns, girls whispered her name with awe. In the saloons, cowhands slapped coins on counters and bet on whether she really existed. And in courtrooms, when men in suits tried to claim immunity, someone would always rise and say, "Ask Clara Jessup what you're owed." She never sought the fame, didn't need the stories. But when a letter came from Austin, bearing the marshal's seal and a new badge wrapped in linen, Clara didn't throw it away. She placed it beside the ledger. And in the stillness of the canyon, where fire once roared and ghosts had whispered, a legend was born, not out of myth, but out of grit, blood, and the quiet conviction of one woman who would not kneel.